Welcome to Charts Today. My name's David Linton, and today's edition for Thursday, the 15th of August, comes to you from London. And big falls on stock markets last night in the US, and so that's having quite an impact. Just a lot of turmoil. Dollar's rising, so dollar's looking strong on all three time frames. That means the euro, of course, is looking weaker against the dollar. Dollar is actually quite strong against the yen on the short-term chart. And against sterling, we're seeing that stronger dollar, meaning that sterling is being suppressed as well, still sitting in this low 120s area. The euro, seeing sterling actually climbing a little bit against the euro, so gaining some short-term strength there, and against the Swiss franc also climbing a little bit as well. Bitcoin is now back below $10,000, so a lot of volatility creeping in there. And we are on this sort of knife edge of this big trading range. Which way we'll break will be key. Looking at the S&P 500 index, global, the US indices were down by about 3% overnight. We saw that in the S&P 500. Now heading back to test these lows we saw last week, and a break below those would be worrying. We really are right on cloud support at the moment, so we've got to watch this situation quite closely now. The Nasdaq 100 also just on daily cloud support. And the Dow down 3%, actually breaking lower than the levels we saw last week. It's actually closing lower, and we're seeing that showing up in the lagging line. So we're now starting to come through on the cloud. So just quite a worrying situation. Need to hold these levels really to be sure. The Russell 2000 making new lows, and so the broader based US market actually falling, and that is normally a sign that the breadth is not so good for the market. The futures this morning, we see the S&P future up 0.5%, which of course is not much after a 3% fall, and the Nasdaq E-mini up 0.4% again. Does mean the US looks set to open a little bit higher today, but not really bouncing. We're seeing the FTSE this morning down 0.2%, and so that's broken last week's lows. So we're already heading lower in Europe, and the same with the FTSE 250. We'll look at the individual stocks in a minute. The DAX is up slightly this morning, but again yesterday broke two new lows, and the CAC 40 also a little bit of relief rally on those US futures, but again now in bearish territory on the medium and short, and actually the long-term time frame, the lagging line is through as well. Japan was down 1%, so its woes continue. We did see the Hang Seng rebound 0.6%, and the Shanghai Composite up 0.25%, and the Indian market bucking the trend up 1%. The Aussie market down 3% in line with the US market, starting to look a little bit vulnerable on that daily chart as well. Brent crude back below $60, the sentiment kicking in there yesterday as well, and WTI also looking weaker at $55, but still holding on to its bull trend on the short-term chart, whereas Brent crude is also just holding on to that trend, but looking a little bit vulnerable. US nat gas sitting at $2.17, not much change there. And if we look at gold, we're sitting at $1,511, rose yesterday as markets went into free fall, and the same for silver. US 10-year yields sitting at 158.60, so well, a lot of talk about the yield curve inversion at the moment, and we are seeing that we're seeing the 10-year yield now falling, with more speculation that the Fed will cut rates, and Trump putting them under pressure to do so. German bond markets edging higher, just coming off a little bit yesterday, but still an amazing trend there. Looking at the individual stocks now, if we look at the Dow, the best performer was down 1%. That was Coca-Cola. So they were down 1%. The worst performer was Dow Inc., down 5%. Walgreens Boots down 5%. Goldman Sachs down 4%. So we're seeing quite a lot of falls. Banks in Europe were falling quite heavily yesterday as well, of course. Only one stock in the Nasdaq 100 up, and that was NetEase. They're up 0.5%. And the chart looking like a little bit of a recovery, but everything else in the Nasdaq 100 fell. That's very unusual to see the whole market falling like that. And we had some big falls as well. Quarate Retail down 8%, Mylan down 8%, Tesla down 6%, heading south again. So that's a real worry there. In the Aussie market, we saw the market was mostly down. We had Super Retail Group up 4%. And that chart looking better, but we had Aurora down 15%, Blackmore's down 14%, Cleanaway Waste Management down 14%. So lots of big falls here in the market yesterday. Looking At the Indian market now, we had Vedanta Limited. They were up 4.8%. So that stock still looking in the doldrums on the chart, but they were up yesterday, bucking the trend. And we had some pharmaceuticals. They were down 5%, and that chart's still looking pretty bearish on the long term. Taking a look now at the FTSE 100, we have GVC Holdings. They were up 2%, so that's this morning, looking a bit better there. And RBS down 8% this morning. Banks really falling away there. Standard Life, Aberdeen, seeing financials actually being hit quite hard, as are the oil majors. So we're seeing quite big falls there too. Shell, live pricing coming in there from Yahoo Finance. Looking at the 250 now, we've got plus 500. They were top performer yesterday and up again this morning. So looking a bit better there. But this chart is worrying on the long term. Medium term on the daily, we might just be seeing the start of recovery there through the cloud, but after big falls, it's a hard one to read. Cirrus Minerals, they're down 5%. CAS Minerals down 4%. So resource stocks being quite hard hit this morning. Looking at the European market, we have Adidas, one of the best looking stocks in the European market in the Euro stocks. They're up 1.2% this morning. On the downside, we've got Eni. Oil majors again being hit. Enel in Italy being hit there. ING Group down. Total, SocGen. So we're seeing oil majors and banks being hit this morning. That's it for today. Until tomorrow, happy charting. See you then.